Join us on our first ever journey to Algiers, the sprawling Mediterranean capital of Algeria. A North African nation with cultural influences from the Middle East to Europe. Explore the winding alleys of the old Casbah and meet the writers, filmmakers and craftsmen putting a new spin on artistic traditions. On the shores of Africa's geographically largest nation lies a sprawling modern city with ancient roots. A bustling port once controlled by Phoenicians, Ottomans, Europeans, even pirates. And a place few tourists visit, despite its rich heritage and warm Mediterranean beaches. This is Algiers, Algeria's capital and home to roughly 3 million. Algiers is a patchwork of different cultures, Islamic, North African and French. There's the old post office, one of the most famous sites in downtown. Here, the French colonial influence is still evident, from the architecture to street-side cafes. Then there's the Casbah, the cultural heart of old Algiers. It's a centuries-old labyrinth of whitewashed homes and shops on a hill. Once a hideaway for North Africa's Barbary corsairs, the Casbah today is overcrowded. Many of its Ottoman-era buildings have fallen into disrepair, propped up by little more than wooden beams. Only a few traditional craftsmen remain here, working with copper and wood. Algiers is an old city with a young population. Nearly half of all Algerians are under the age of 24. And even though not all of them have jobs, there were relatively few protesters here in 2011, when Algeria's North African neighbours revolted against ageing leaders. Most Algerians are content enough with the semblance of normalcy in Algiers, because it wasn't always so quiet. This is Algiers' most prominent landmark, the Shrine of Martyrs. It's an imposing reminder of Algeria's violent and not too distant past, a memorial for the Algerians who died in the battle for independence against France in the 1950s and 60s. Just 2 decades ago, Algeria was devastated by a civil war between the government and militant Islamist groups. Both sides were accused of atrocities. But civilians suffered the most. At least 150,000 Algerians were killed in the 1990s, the so-called Black Decade. Many of the victims were artists, writers, poets, and musicians. Others fled for their lives. Today, though, the arts and cultural scene in Algiers is making somewhat of a comeback. And you can see signs of the revival throughout the city, and recently, even from above. This is the Algiers of Les Terrasses, or the rooftops. A recent film by the Algerian movie director Mozak Alawash. The film portrays the complexities of life in the capital as seen from 5 different rooftops. The 69-year-old director got the idea while on a rooftop himself, realizing that in Algiers, a lot happens above the streets.
I realized that in Algiers, rooftops are becoming like houses themselves, where people live. There's a lot of life on the rooftops.
The rooftops takes place over the course of one day and revolves around the Islamic call to prayer, beckoning the Muslim faithful below 5 times a day. From up here, it can be very loud.
When you're on the rooftops, the call sounds different. It completely envelops the city.
And in this conservative society, Al-Awash doesn't pull any punches. The rooftops highlight some sensitive subjects like sexuality, violence, and the kind of poverty that drives many here to live in makeshift homes built illegally on rooftops. This character, Saluma, is forced to squat after her house in the Casbah collapsed.
I'm an observer of society. My films are fictional, but I tackle real issues like fundamentalism, corruption, and frustrations of the youth in society. Young people have a lot of issues here.
Al-Awash is one of the most prolific filmmakers in the region, credited with 26 titles since 1975. He says he makes no money off his films. He does it purely, he says, out of passion, and sees it as an important cultural tool to drive social change.
Film has to exist in society. The more filmmaking, the more cinema, the more open society is. Without it, there is fundamentalism and less cultural progress.
Al-Awash funded the rooftops with support from Algeria's Ministry of Culture and the Doha Film Institute. It cost $150,000 and took just 11 days to shoot. But even so, making movies in Algiers isn't easy. In the rooftops, Hassan Bezarari plays the role of a corrupt sheikh. He is one of the most famous actors here, but wishes there was more local work. Algeria was once a cinematic heavyweight in the region, but since the civil war, it's been surpassed by the likes of Egypt, Lebanon, and the Gulf.
We are really unhappy. We don't have much production of films. There's not a permanent industry in Algeria.
Nabil Asli, another of the film stars, dreams of acting full-time. But Asli worries that he may have to leave the country to make that a reality.
Of course it feels bad that I might not achieve that dream here in Algeria, but I won't stop. It's part of life to fail, and you just have to keep on working.
Al-Awash knows that all too well. He had to leave Algeria to keep his dream alive, moving to France in the 1990s. That was after seeing a gunfight outside this window in his Algiers office. Al-Awash stayed in France because there's little work here. In the 1980s, Algeria had hundreds of cinemas. Most were closed during the bloody 1990s. In 2009, there were just 19 screens.
There's just not enough cinema here. We don't have a lot of theater either. Cultural life isn't very big. I can't say it's great now, but I am working to make it better.
That's why Al-Awash is still doing what he does best, making movies that push boundaries. His next film is about the rise of drug use in Algeria. Like the rooftops, it may not be a theatrical release here, but Al-Awash hopes that will change in the future. Up next, a different kind of art taking off in Algiers. See how these young artists are making manga, drawing fans and writing a new chapter for Algeria's literary history.
We had to build something from nothing.